vegetative reproduction, or it's called as vegetative propagation, wherein one organism would be giving rise to another organism without involving any gametic cells, any germs cells. That's called as vegetative reproduction. Now, generally in vegetative reproduction, existing organism would be giving rise to another organism without any specific modification in its body. That's called as vegetative reproduction. Whereas in asexual reproduction, which is again doesn't involve any gametic cells, any germ cells, so one individual will be giving rise to another individual, but there are certain specialized structures or parts which would be responsible for reproduction. That's called as asexual reproduction. And the third method is sexual reproduction, wherein two gametes are involved. Let's not call these as germs, sex cells. Out of the two gametes, if both the gametes are similar in structure, in shape, in appearance, we call that as isogamy. The word iso stands for similar, and gamy, here it represents gametes. So when the gametes are similar structurally, appearance-wise, compositionally, then we call that as isogamy. And if the gametes are dissimilar, then we call it as anisogamy. That is, the gametes are dissimilar. Aniso is dissimilar, and iso, something which is not similar. The known type of anisogamy is oogamy. Oogamy. The word oo here stands for egg cell. In oogamy, there is an egg cell and there's a male gamete. Sperm cell it is generally called, but I'll temporarily call it as male gamete. The two gametes are dissimilar. Dissimilar what way? They could be structurally dissimilar, they could be compositionally dissimilar, and one of them, in oogamy, one of the gametes, that is something which is called as an oogamete, female gamete, it's non-motile, it doesn't move, it's stationary, while the male gamete is a motile gamete. So in oogamy, a stationary female gamete and a motile male gamete is a characteristic feature of oogamy. Now we are going to focus upon oogamy basically. That is a reproduction involving two dissimilar gametes, one of which is motile, another one is stationary or non-motile. Now this stationary or non-motile gamete, female gamete as I was talking about, can be called as an oocyte or an egg cell. Oocyte or an egg cell. Let's know something more about the egg cell. So the oocyte, the female gamete, the non-motile gamete or the egg cell, it is going to be a haploid female gamete. Haploid means it has only half the number of chromosomes, that is n number of chromosomes. So haploid egg cell is what we are referring to. Haploid because after fertilization the zygotic cell, the fertilized cell, would be becoming diploid, and subsequently the organism would be developing into a diploid organism. So the egg cell, the gametic cell, has to be a haploid cell. So this haploid cell, the haploid oocyte, there are various types of it. currently what we are going to refer to, it's the types based on the contents of the cell. Now, what basically are the contents of the cell? There is a cytoplasm, there is a haploid nucleus, and yolk. Now, yolk basically is a fatty material, let's say, basically nutritive in function. In this session, I'm going to elaborate types of eggs or classification of eggs on the basis of the yolk that it contains. To make you familiarized with the term yolk, if you have seen a chicken egg, which we generally consume, the yellow part of it is the yolk, white part is the albumin, let's say a protein component. So that is the yolk. Now, how do we classify them? Basically, to start with, classification on the basis of the amount of yolk an egg cell contains. That is, if it's almost absent, negligibly contained, then we call that as alecythal egg. Here the word lecitho stands for yolk. So almost absence of yolk is alecythal egg. Human being could be the best example. Amount of yolk is negligibly small or almost absent. While the other types would be microlecithal. Micro means less. Very small amount of yolk, but definitely not alecythal. Small amount of yolk is contained in the egg cell. Its distribution we will talk about in further part of the session. Example would be sea urchin, Anaconda, or Herdmania, a protochordate, of course. These are examples of microlecithal eggs. Oligolecithal, similar to microlecithal but little more than that. Oligolecithal eggs. Again, a protochordate called Amphioxus could be the example. Then mesolecithal. Moderate amount of yolk will be contained in it. Examples could be amphibians like frog, toad, etc. And next could be megalecithal or macrolecithal eggs. Large amount of yolk is contained in the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm could be pushed towards the periphery or could be localized in the center. Examples could be insects, birds, or even reptiles. Large amount of yolk is contained in the egg cell. Now that's classification on the basis of amount of yolk contained in the egg cell. There is a way to classify them on the basis of the distribution of the yolk inside the egg cell. Let's come to that. Now when we talk about classification of eggs on the basis of distribution of yolk, we are certainly not including alecithal or microlecithal eggs. It could be mesolecithal or macrolecithal eggs that we will be talking about. If that yolk is evenly distributed in the cytoplasm, then we call it as homo or isolecithal eggs or egg cells, homolecital or isolecital egg cells. Examples could be annelids, echinoderms, protochordates like Amphioxus. Yolk is evenly distributed in the cytoplasm. If the yolk is contained right in the center, centrolecital, that is, see, if this is the egg cell, if this is the nucleus, this is where the yolk could be localized. Rest all is cytoplasm. So if the yolk is contained right in the center of the cell, egg cell, then we call it as centrolecital egg cell. Example could be insects. Example could be insects. Then telolecital. Telo means end. So yolk is contained in one part of the cell. Maybe it could be macrolecital, it could be mesolecital. Accordingly, telolecital types can be made into light and heavy. Mesolecital eggs and macrolecital eggs. This could be seen in toad, this could be seen in birds. Heavy telolecital. There is one unique type. It's called as myo or myolecital egg, wherein large amount of yolk is contained right in the center of the cell. It almost occupies the cell. Cytoplasm and nucleus are pushed towards the periphery. So major part of the cell is occupied by the yolk. Cytoplasm and nucleus occupy the peripheral component. Examples could be reptiles or egg-laying mammals. That's an example of myo or myolecital egg cell. This is classification of eggs on the basis of distribution of yolk. How do you like the lecture? Do keep watching the videos, like them, subscribe to them, and share amongst your friends and family. Do not forget to post your comments or suggestions or queries. Thank you.